The alarm shrieked through the combat training facility as Lieutenant Marcus Chen watched the door seal with a hiss that promised no escape. Instructor Kelvara, a 7-foot reptilian Draknor with scales that gleamed like polished obsidian, bared her fangs in what passed for a smile among her species. The other cadets, all aliens from a dozen different worlds, pressed themselves against the far wall of the cylindrical arena. Between Marcus and the terrified crowd sat something that made even seasoned warriors freeze with primal fear. A Vorathian pup, no larger than a terrier, with midnight fur that seemed to absorb light itself. Its 6 eyes, arranged in a crown around its elongated skull, tracked every movement in the room with predatory precision. The species had conquered 47 systems before the Galactic Council finally managed to contain them in their home sector. Adults stood 12 feet tall and could tear through starship hulls with their claws. The pups were supposedly harmless, merely curious, but every instinct in the room screamed otherwise. Marcus had been the last to enter the training module, which meant he stood closest to the creature when Kelvara triggered the lockdown. The other students, species that had evolved as prey animals or peaceful herbivores, whimpered and clicked in their native tongues. A Peluvian cadet, its translucent body quivering with fear, actually fainted. The pup tilted its head, studying Marcus with an intelligence that seemed far too advanced for something so young. It took a step forward, razor-sharp claws clicking against the metal floor. The sound echoed like gunshots in the sudden silence. Kelvara's voice crackled through the intercom, calm and measured. "This is Assessment 7. The Vorathian juvenile has not been fed in 3 days. It weighs 40 pounds and possesses bite force equivalent to an industrial press. Your previous weapons training is irrelevant. Your tactical knowledge means nothing. This is survival." She paused, and Marcus could hear the grin in her voice. "The human concept of fight or flight applies here. Choose wisely." The pup growled, a sound that resonated in frequencies that made Marcus's bones ache. It was 5 feet away now, close enough that he could smell the musky scent of its fur, see the dried blood on its teeth from whatever it had eaten last. The creature's muscles bunched beneath its pelt, preparing to spring. Every cadet expected Marcus to run, to scramble away like any sane being would. The Galactic Council's files on humanity emphasized their technological prowess, their tactical minds, their adaptability. But those files missed something crucial, something the galaxy was only beginning to understand about the species from Earth. Humans had climbed to the top of their food chain on a death world where everything evolved to kill. They domesticated wolves. They kept reptiles as pets. They dove into oceans filled with apex predators for recreation. Marcus didn't run. He sat down, cross-legged on the cold floor, hands resting on his knees. He maintained eye contact with the Vorathian pup. The creature froze mid-stalk, confusion rippling across its features. The cadets gasped. Kelvara leaned closer to her observation screen, her 3-chambered heart quickening with interest. The pup crept forward another step, growling uncertainly. Marcus remained still as stone, breathing slowly, deliberately. His grandfather had taught him this with stray dogs back in Nevada. His mother had reinforced it with the feral cats near their apartment. Don't show fear. Don't show aggression. Show curiosity. The Vorathian pup's growl faded to a questioning whine. The second part of the assessment unfolded with a tension that made the observation deck's atmosphere thick enough to cut. Kelvara watched her monitors with the focus of a surgeon performing a delicate operation. Beside her, Administrator Prex, a floating zealoth whose gaseous body swirled in shades of concerned purple, pulsed with anxiety. "Should we not intervene?" Prex's translated voice wavered with worry. "The human shows signs of neural damage. No rational being confronts a Vorathian with such passivity." Kelvara's tail swished with barely contained excitement. "Watch. Learn." In the arena, Marcus extended his hand slowly, palm down, fingers relaxed. The gesture looked suicidal to every observer. The pup could remove his arm at the wrist with a single bite. Its teeth were designed to crack the armored shells of Kylax beetles. creatures that survived in the volcanic zones of Vorath Prime. Human bone would offer no resistance. The pup sniffed, its nostrils flaring as it processed Marcus's scent. Its eyes, all 6 of them, narrowed with concentration. The creature had never encountered a human before. The scent profile confused it. A mixture of predator and prey, aggression and calm, danger and safety. On Vorath Prime, everything either ran from the Vorathians or died. This strange 2-legged thing did neither. Marcus spoke, his voice low and steady. "Easy there, buddy. Nobody's going to hurt you. You're just scared, aren't you?" Locked in a strange place with weird smells and loud noises, the other cadets couldn't believe their audio receptors. A Hranji warrior, whose species had fought the Vorathians for 3 generations before losing 2 colonies to their expansion, chittered in disbelief. The human has gone mad. It speaks to death itself as though greeting a friend. But the pup responded. Its ears, which had been flat against its skull in aggressive posture, perked slightly. The growl that had rumbled in its chest faded completely. It stretched its neck forward, still cautious, and touched its nose to Marcus's palm. The contact lasted only a second before the pup jerked back, startled by its own boldness. But something had changed. The predatory tension in its body language shifted to something else. Something the observers recognized from their own domesticated animals, though none would have believed a Vorathian capable of it. Curiosity. Marcus slowly withdrew his hand and reached into his uniform pocket. Several cadets gasped, certain he was reaching for a concealed weapon, which would have been a massive violation of protocol and gotten everyone killed. Instead, he pulled out a protein bar, standard-issue rations that tasted like sweetened cardboard but provided necessary nutrition. He broke off a piece and tossed it gently toward the pup. The morsel landed a foot in front of the creature. The Vorathian pup pounced on it with lightning speed, snapping it up and swallowing without chewing, its eyes fixed on Marcus with renewed intensity. "Oh, you liked that, did you?" Marcus broke off another piece, this time holding it in his palm. He extended his arm again, slower than before. Kelvara's claws dug into the observation console. "This is unprecedented. I have studied Vorathian behavior for 11 cycles." The pup approached Marcus's outstretched hand with careful steps. It snatched the food from his palm, teeth grazing his skin but not breaking it. The controlled bite, the measured approach. These were not the actions of a mindless predator. They were the actions of an intelligent being, making a conscious choice. Marcus continued offering food, each piece bringing the pup closer, building something that defied everything the Galactic Council knew about one of the most dangerous species in known space. By the time the protein bar was gone, the Vorathian pup sat within arm's reach, watching Marcus with an expression that looked almost friendly. "My turn," Marcus said softly. He reached out, moving with glacial slowness, and scratched behind one of the pup's ears. The pup's eyes closed. A sound emerged from its throat. Not quite a purr, more like a rhythmic rumble, but unmistakably content. The observers stood in shocked silence. A Peluvian cadet who had regained consciousness took one look at the scene and fainted again. Marcus smiled, continuing to scratch behind the creature's ears, then moving to under its chin. The pup leaned into the touch, its tail, a muscular appendage lined with bony protrusions, beginning to wag slightly. "You're not so scary, are you?" Marcus murmured. "Just a baby far from home. Probably lonely. Definitely hungry. But not a monster. Never a monster." The pup opened its eyes and looked at Marcus with an intensity that seemed to pierce through to his soul. Then, in a movement that would be analyzed and debated in xenobiology departments for years to come, the Vorathian pup laid down beside Marcus and rested its head on his lap. Kelvara's jaw dropped, displaying rows of predatory teeth in an expression of pure astonishment. "By the ancient stars," she whispered. "The humans tamed the wolves. They tamed the great cats. They made companions of creatures that hunted them." She turned to Prex, her eyes gleaming with a revelation that would change military doctrine across 3 sectors. They have done it again. Administrator Prex swirled in shades of deep blue, the Zealoth equivalent of profound respect. The Earth designation makes more sense now. Death. World. They do not merely survive danger. They befriend it. They adopt it. They make it family. Marcus continued petting the Vorathian pup, which had begun to snore softly, its 6 eyes closed in contentment. The other cadets slowly began to approach, their fear gradually being replaced by wonder and a healthy dose of disbelief. A Korvax cadet, its feathers ruffled with anxiety, spoke in halting standard. How does the human accomplish this? What technology? What chemical manipulation? Well, Marcus looked up, his expression genuinely confused. Technology? I just treated it like a dog. You know, a pet. You guys do have pets, right? The silence that followed was absolute. Finally, Kelvara's laugh boomed through the intercom, a sound like grinding rocks that nonetheless conveyed genuine amusement. Cadets. Today you have learned the most valuable lesson in xenobiology. Humans do not see predators the way we do. Where we see threats, they see potential friends. Where we see death, they see puppies. The training session continued for another hour, with Marcus demonstrating basic interaction techniques, while the Vorathian pup followed him around the arena like an oversized, deadly shadow. By the end, the creature was performing simple commands. Sit, stay, come. The fact that it had learned these behaviors in less than 2 hours, while most training protocols for dangerous species took months, was not lost on the observers. When Kelvara finally opened the containment door, the pup whined, reluctant to leave Marcus's side. Marcus scratched behind its ears one final time. You'll be okay, buddy. Maybe we'll see each other again. The pup licked his hand with a tongue that could have stripped flesh from bone but instead delivered nothing worse than copious amounts of saliva. Then it padded out of the arena, casting longing looks back at Marcus until the handlers secured it. The other cadets filed out in stunned silence, giving Marcus a wide berth. Some looked at him with new respect, others with fear, a few with both. Marcus gathered his gear and headed for the exit, unaware that he had just changed the course of galactic military policy and xeno-diplomatic relations. The third phase began in the debriefing chamber, a circular room with holographic displays showing the recorded training session from multiple angles. Marcus sat alone at the center table while a council of senior instructors and military officials materialized around him through quantum entanglement projections. Their physical bodies were scattered across 3 sectors, but their holographic presence felt oppressively real. General Vorn, a decorated Kranix officer whose carapace bore the scars of a dozen campaigns, spoke first. His mandibles clicked with agitation. Lieutenant Chen, your actions today violated 17 separate safety protocols. You endangered not only yourself, but every cadet in that training module. You will explain your reasoning. Now, Marcus stood at attention, his military training kicking in despite the surreal nature of being lectured by a 10-foot insectoid general. Sir, with respect, the protocols assume that aggression or retreat are the only viable responses to predatory species. I assessed that a third option existed. A third option, Vorn repeated, his voice dripping with skepticism. You sat down. You offered food. You touched a creature that has killed trained soldiers. This is not strategy. This is madness. Kelvara, present both in hologram and in person, interjected. General, if I may, the humans' approach succeeded where traditional methods have consistently failed. We have attempted to control Vorathian specimens for decades. They resist training. They attack handlers. They cannot be reliably contained. Yet this one, in the span of one training session, displayed behavioral patterns consistent with domesticated companion animals. A Peluvian admiral, her translucent form shimmering with bioluminescent patterns that indicated deep thought, spoke next. Instructor Kelvara raises a valid point. However, we cannot ignore the broader implications. If humans possess an innate ability to neutralize dangerous species through bonding behaviors, this represents either a tremendous asset or a catastrophic security risk. Marcus felt the weight of multiple gazes on him, some curious, some hostile, all calculating. He had joined the Galactic Defense Force 6 months ago as part of humanity's integration into the wider community of spacefaring civilizations. Earth had been discovered only 3 years prior, a death world teeming with aggressive life forms and a single species that had somehow not only survived but thrived. The galaxy was still trying to figure out what to do with humans. Commander Yilis, a Hranji whose silver fur had gone white with age and experience, leaned forward in her projection. "Lieutenant, your file indicates you grew up in what you call Nevada, a desert region on Earth. It also indicates you volunteered at animal shelters and worked with rescue organizations. Explain the connection between these civilian activities and your military service." "Ma'am, there isn't one, officially. But my experience with animals taught me that most aggression comes from fear or pain. Even predators have emotional needs. They want security, food, social connection. The Vorathian pup wasn't trying to hunt us. It was scared and stressed in an unfamiliar environment. I recognized the signs." "Over." Yilis's ears twitched, a Hranji expression of intense interest. "You recognized the signs in an alien species you had never encountered before." "How?" Marcus considered his answer carefully. "Body language is pretty universal, ma'am. Tense muscles mean stress. Flattened ears mean fear or aggression. The specific expressions change between species, but the underlying patterns are similar. Life tends to solve similar problems in similar ways." General Vorn's mandibles clacked together, a sound like breaking branches. "This is precisely the problem. Humans see patterns where none exist. They anthropomorphize. They project their own emotions onto creatures incapable of complex thought. The Vorathians are registered as Class 5 hostile species. They have no diplomatic relations with the Galactic Council because they cannot be reasoned with. They are animals. With respect, sir, so are we," Marcus said quietly. "Humans are animals too. We're predators from a death world, just like the Vorathians. Maybe that's why I could connect with the pup. We speak the same language. In a way, the language of survival." The chamber fell silent. Holographic projections flickered as the assembled officers processed this statement. Finally, Administrator Prex, who had been observing without comment, spoke. "The human makes a point that our xenobiologists have been debating since Earth's discovery. Humans evolved alongside megafauna predators. They competed with creatures that should have driven them to extinction. Instead, they domesticated their competitors. Wolves became dogs. Wildcats became house pets. They even kept reptilian predators as companions. This is not normal evolutionary behavior." A new hologram materialized, this one belonging to Dr. Seraph, a Korvax xenobiologist whose feathers had been dyed in academic colors. "I have been studying the human bonding phenomenon for 2 years. What Lieutenant Chen accomplished today supports my primary hypothesis. Humans possess an abnormally strong drive to form pack bonds across species barriers. This likely evolved as a survival mechanism on their hostile homeworld. By recruiting other predators as allies instead of competing with them, early humans gained significant advantages. The behavior has become instinctive." "Instinctive," General Vorn repeated, his tone suggesting he had tasted something unpleasant. "So you are saying humans cannot help but attempt to befriend dangerous species?" "That is an oversimplification, but essentially correct," Dr. Seraph confirmed. "My research indicates that humans form emotional attachments to virtually anything, including their vehicles, their weapons, and their dwelling structures. They name inanimate objects. They grieve when machines malfunction. Their capacity for attachment is unprecedented in known sentient species." Marcus shifted uncomfortably as the discussion continued over his head. He had never thought of himself as particularly special. He just liked animals. Was that really so strange? Kelvara's voice cut through the academic debate. We are circling the central question without addressing it. Should humans be allowed to interact with hostile species as part of their military training? Should we develop protocols based on Lieutenant Chen's methods? Or should we restrict human contact with dangerous xenofauna entirely? The vote that followed was split almost evenly, with slight majority favoring the development of new protocols. General Vorn cast the deciding vote, with obvious reluctance. Very well. Lieutenant Chen, you will work with Dr. Seraph to develop a training program. But understand this. Human, if your methods result in casualties, if your bonding instincts lead to deaths, the consequences will fall entirely on your species. Earth's membership in the Galactic Defense Force will be reviewed. Are we clear? Crystal clear, sir, Marcus replied, his stomach knotting with new pressure. He had just wanted to help a scared animal. Now the fate of human-galactic relations rested on his shoulders. The holograms began to flicker out one by one, until only Kelvara remained. She studied Marcus with her reptilian eyes, unblinking and intense. You did well today, Lieutenant. You trusted your instincts when protocol demanded otherwise. That takes courage. But courage without wisdom leads to graveyards. Learn quickly. Teach carefully. The galaxy is watching your species with great interest. And not all of that interest is friendly. With that, she too vanished, leaving Marcus alone in the debriefing chamber. Through the transparent walls, he could see the training facility stretching out below. Level after level of combat scenarios, survival simulations, and xenobiological research laboratories. Somewhere in those levels, the Vorathian pup was being returned to its containment unit, probably confused about why the nice human had left. Marcus touched the glass and made a silent promise. He would figure this out. He would prove that humans could be assets to the galactic community, not liabilities. And maybe, just maybe, he would get to see that pup again. The fourth phase launched with unexpected speed. Within 2 days of the assessment, Marcus found himself reassigned from standard combat training to a newly created xenobiology interaction program. Dr. Seraph met him at Laboratory 7, a massive facility dedicated to studying dangerous species in controlled environments. The Korvax scientist's feathers ruffled with barely contained excitement as she led Marcus through security checkpoints manned by nervous guards. Your demonstration has caused quite the disturbance, Dr. Seraph explained as they walked through corridors lined with reinforced containment cells. Half the scientific community is calling you a genius. The other half believes you are a statistical anomaly. A human who happened to guess correctly. We will prove which assessment is accurate. The laboratory they entered was divided into observation areas and interaction zones. Holographic displays showed data streams from hundreds of sensors, monitoring everything from atmospheric composition to emotional stress indicators. At the far end of the room stood a series of containment units, each holding a different species, all classified as hostile or dangerous. We will start with less aggressive species and progress to more challenging subjects, Dr. Seraph said, pulling up a holographic interface. The Galactic Council has given us access to 37 different species, ranging from Class 2 territorial defenders to Class 5 apex predators. Your task is to attempt interaction using your instinctive methods, while we monitor and record every variable. Over the next 3 weeks, Marcus worked with creatures that would have given most people nightmares. A Skrell hatchling with crystalline spines that could fire like projectiles. A Urnax juvenile that secreted acidic compounds through its skin. A Keleth pup that generated electrical discharges powerful enough to stun a grown Kranix. Each species had killed handlers in the past. Each was considered too dangerous for standard training programs. Marcus approached each one the same way he had approached the Vorathian pup. Calm. Patient. Observant. He learned to read the subtle signs of stress and fear beneath the aggressive displays. He discovered that most attacks came from misunderstanding, not malice. The Skrell hatchling fired its spines when startled, but responded to gentle sounds and slow movements. The Yurnax juvenile controlled its acid secretion when it felt safe. The Kelith pup's electrical discharges decreased dramatically when given proper mental stimulation. Dr. Seraph documented everything with scientific precision, her initial skepticism gradually transforming into wonder. "Your success rate is 83%, she announced after the third week. Across 37 species, including 6 that were scheduled for termination due to unmanageable aggression. This is not statistical anomaly. This is reproducible methodology. Second. God. Second. But not every interaction succeeded. A Vorath adult, brought in at General Vorn's insistence to test the limits of Marcus's abilities, nearly killed him. The creature was not a pup, but a fully grown specimen, scarred and violent from years in captivity. Marcus's attempts at peaceful contact were met with immediate attack. Only the emergency force field saved his life. He spent 2 days in medical recovering from a dislocated shoulder and multiple lacerations. Dr. Seraph visited him with datapads filled with analysis. The adult Vorathian showed no response to your methods. This is important information. Your techniques work with juveniles and young adults, but not with mature specimens that have been traumatized or conditioned to violence. Marcus nodded, wincing at the pain in his shoulder. Makes sense. You can't undo years of trauma in one session. Same principle applies to dogs back on Earth. A rescue animal that has been abused needs months or years of patient rehabilitation. Some never fully recover. Then your program should focus on juveniles, Dr. Seraph concluded. We intercept them before negative conditioning occurs. We raise them alongside humans using your bonding techniques. By the time they reach maturity, they will have imprinted on humans as pack members rather than threats. The implications of this approach rippled through the military and scientific community like a shockwave. If humanity could domesticate the galaxy's most dangerous species from a young age, the strategic advantages would be immense. Vorathian warhounds fighting alongside human soldiers. Kelith shock troops generating electrical assaults on enemy positions. Yurnax infiltrators, using their acid secretion for specialized operations. But Marcus felt increasingly uneasy about the direction the program was taking. He had wanted to help scared animals, not create weapons. He voiced his concerns to Kelvara during one of their training reviews. You are troubled, Kelvara observed, her reptilian features unreadable to most species, but Marcus had learned to interpret her subtle body language. You believed you were saving lives. Now you worry. You are creating tools for war. I don't want these creatures to be used as living weapons, Marcus admitted. They deserve better than that. They're intelligent, emotional beings. Kelvara's tail swished, in what Marcus had learned was her equivalent of a thoughtful nod. A dilemma humanity has faced before, I think. You domesticated wolves. Did you intend to create guardians and hunters? Or did you simply want companions? Both, I guess. But the wolves had a choice. They weren't forced into roles they didn't want. And these species will have choices too, if you design your program correctly. You can teach them to defend, without teaching them to attack. You can train them for protection, without training them for conquest. The difference lies in intention and methodology. This is why I support your work, Lieutenant. You do not see soldiers when you look at these creatures. You see individuals. Ask. The conversation stayed with Marcus as the program expanded. More humans were recruited. Volunteers who shared his love for animals and his patience with difficult species. They came from all backgrounds. Jennifer Walsh, a veterinarian from Australia who had worked with crocodiles and sharks. Danny Foster, a Montana rancher who had raised orphaned grizzly bears. Lisa Park, a marine biologist from Korea who specialized in octopus intelligence. Each brought unique perspectives and techniques. Together, they developed protocols that emphasized mutual respect and consent. The creatures in their program were never forced to perform. They were given choices, rewarded for cooperation, allowed to refuse participation in activities that stressed them. The success rate climbed to 94%. The Galactic Council took notice. Delegations visited the facility to observe the impossible. Vorathian pups playing with human handlers. Kelith juveniles learning complex tasks through positive reinforcement. Yurnax younglings accepting gentle touch without secreting defensive acids. Species that had been considered permanent threats were forming bonds with humans that defied centuries of xenobiological understanding. Not everyone approved. Protests erupted on multiple worlds. The Harangi, who had lost colonies to Vorathian expansion, called the program an insult to their dead. Militant factions accused humans of creating an army of monsters. Security threats against the facility increased weekly. Armed guards patrolled the perimeter while Marcus and his team continued their work inside. One evening, as Marcus finished a session with a particularly shy Skrell juvenile, alarms blared through the facility. Security had detected an intrusion. Armed individuals had breached the outer perimeter and were moving toward the containment areas. The creatures, sensitive to the sudden tension, began to panic. Howls and screeches filled the air as juvenile predators responded to the threat with instinctive aggression. Marcus ran to the main containment hall, where his team was trying to calm dozens of agitated creatures. The situation was deteriorating rapidly. If the juveniles broke containment in their panicked state, they could kill dozens of people. If security responded with lethal force to protect personnel, the program would be destroyed, and the creatures would be executed. "We need to get them calm," Danny shouted over the noise. "They can smell our fear. They know something is wrong." Marcus made a decision that would either save the situation or doom them all. He opened the containment fields. Every single one. The juvenile predators, freed from their cells, could now move throughout the facility without restriction. His team stared at him in disbelief. Dr. Seraph, monitoring from the observation deck, gasped in horror. "Trust them," Marcus said simply. The final phase unfolded in chaos and revelation as juvenile predators flooded into the main corridor. The Vorathian pup Marcus had first bonded with led the pack, its 6 eyes scanning for threats. Behind it came the Kelith pup crackling with defensive electricity, the Yurnax juvenile with its skin secreting warning chemicals, and 24 other creatures that represented the most dangerous species in known space. The human team stood together, making no aggressive moves. Jennifer Walsh knelt down and extended her hand to a nervous Skrell juvenile, whose crystalline spines were fully extended in fear. "It's okay, sweetheart. We've got this. Nobody's going to hurt you." The intruders burst through the main laboratory door, 5 figures in combat armor carrying military-grade weapons. Their leader, a Harangi mercenary with hate burning in his eyes, took in the scene and laughed harshly. "Perfect. The monsters are already loose. This makes our job easier. When we are done here, these abominations will be dead, and your program will be finished." Marcus stepped forward, placing himself between the intruders and his team. The juvenile predators gathered behind him, growling and hissing, their bodies tense but controlled. "These aren't monsters. They're children, and if you want to hurt them, you'll have to go through me." The mercenary raised his weapon. 1 human against trained soldiers. Poor odds. 1 human and friends. Marcus corrected. He didn't look back. Didn't need to. He could feel them there. The creatures he had spent weeks bonding with. Teaching. Protecting. They understood threat. They understood pack. They understood loyalty. The Vorathian pup moved to Marcus's side, placing itself between him and the weapons. Its growl dropped to a frequency that made the floor vibrate. The Kelith pup positioned itself on his other side, electricity arcing between its specialized organs in a display that lit the corridor with blue-white light. The Yurnax juvenile climbed the wall, positioning itself above the intruders, acid dripping from its skin in warning. One by one, the other juveniles took defensive positions around the human team. Not attacking, not yet, but making their intentions clear. These humans were pack. Threatening them meant war. The mercenaries' confidence wavered. You cannot control them. They are wild beasts. They will turn on you the moment blood is spilled. They're not wild, Lisa Park said calmly, standing beside Marcus. They're family. And family protects each other. Security forces arrived at that moment, surrounding the intruders with weapons drawn. But everyone in the corridor knew the security team was unnecessary. The juvenile predators had already won the standoff through sheer intimidation. 5 armed mercenaries against 24 creatures bred for combat was no contest. And the intruders knew it. General Vorn arrived 30 minutes later, his carapace gleaming under the harsh lights as he surveyed the scene. The intruders were in custody. The juvenile predators had returned to their areas without incident. Not a single casualty, not even an injury. The humans stood together, exhausted but unharmed, while their charges settled back into calm routines. Explain, Vorn demanded, his mandibles clicking with agitation. Explain how releasing dangerous species into an active security situation resulted in 0 casualties. This defies all tactical logic. Marcus met the general's multifaceted gaze without flinching. They defended their pack, sir. We never taught them to attack. We taught them to trust. When that trust was threatened, they responded to protect what they valued. That's not training. That's relationship. Dr. Seraph descended from the observation deck, her feathers ruffled with excitement. General, the data from this incident is extraordinary. The juveniles showed coordinated defensive behavior without prior training in combat tactics. They assessed threat levels, positioned themselves strategically, and used intimidation rather than violence. This level of sophistication suggests they have been learning social cooperation from their human handlers at a much deeper level than we realized. Kelvara joined them, her reptilian smile showing genuine pride. The humans did not create weapons today. They created protectors. There is a significant difference. A weapon is wielded by another. A protector makes independent choices about what to defend and why. General Vorn was silent for a long moment, his complex insect mind processing implications that would reshape military doctrine across the galaxy. Finally, he spoke. The Council will need to see this. All of it. The training methods, the bonding protocols, the behavioral outcomes. If humanity can teach the galaxy's most dangerous species to become protectors rather than conquerors, this changes everything we know about xenobiology and military application. The following weeks brought a parade of delegates, scientists, and military observers. The facility became a showcase for a new paradigm in interspecies relations. The humans demonstrated their methods, while the juvenile predators showed off capabilities that amazed even the most skeptical observers. A Vorathian pup retrieved specific objects on command. A Kelith juvenile solved complex puzzles to earn rewards. A Yernax youngster learned to control its acid secretion with precision, painting patterns on treated surfaces. But the most powerful demonstration came during an open session where visitors could interact with the juveniles under supervision. A Peluvian delegate, whose species had been nearly driven to extinction by Yernax raids, trembled as she approached a juvenile of the species that had haunted her people's nightmares for generations. Lisa Park guided her gently, showing her how to read the creature's body language, when to approach, when to give space. The Yernax juvenile, sensing the delegate's fear, remained perfectly still. It didn't secrete acid. It didn't make threatening gestures. Instead, it did something that made the entire observation deck fall silent. It lowered its head and made a soft chirping sound, a vocalization that xenobiologists had only observed in Yernax parents comforting their young. The Peluvian delegate reached out with a shaking appendage and touched the juvenile's smooth hide. The contact lasted only seconds, but when she withdrew, she was radiating bioluminescent patterns that indicated profound emotion. I have hated this species my entire life. They killed my ancestors. They destroyed our colonies. But this one, this child, it only wants connection. How is this possible? Marcus answered quietly. Because it was never given a reason to hate. It was shown kindness instead of fear, patience instead of punishment. It learned that different species can be family instead of enemies. That's the choice we all have, really. Teach the next generation to continue old hatreds, or teach them to build new bridges. The impact of those words rippled through the assembled delegates. Arguments that had raged for centuries about territorial disputes, resource conflicts, and ancient grievances suddenly seemed less important than the simple truth demonstrated by a human and a creature that should have been his enemy. The Galactic Council convened a special session 3 months after the intrusion incident. Marcus and his team were summoned to give testimony. They stood in the Great Chamber where representatives from 1,000 worlds debated the future of galactic civilization. The juvenile predators came with them, calm and confident beside their human partners. Ambassador Quelix, an ancient zealoth whose gaseous body swirled in colors that indicated she had witnessed the rise and fall of civilizations, addressed the assembly. For 2 centuries, the Council has debated how to handle hostile species. We have tried containment. We have tried relocation. We have tried extinction protocols. All have failed or created new problems. The humans offer a 4th option: integration through understanding, partnership through respect. Not everyone agreed. The Harangi delegation walked out in protest. Several militant species called the program dangerous naivety, but a majority voted to expand the initiative. Humanity would be given resources and authority to develop xenobiological interaction programs across Council space. The creatures raised in these programs would become a new class of citizens, protected by law, given rights, and responsibilities. Marcus stood with the Vorathian pup beside him, now grown to the size of a large dog, and addressed the Council. We don't claim to have all the answers. Some species might never be compatible with this approach. Some individuals might be too damaged by past trauma, but we owe it to ourselves and to them to try. Because the alternative, eternal conflict and fear, that's the real death sentence for galactic civilization. The vote passed with 68% approval. A new era began, one where humanity's strange ability to befriend danger became a cornerstone of interspecies relations. Training facilities opened on dozens of worlds. Humans who had worked with difficult animals back on Earth found themselves in high demand as instructors. The methodology spread, adapted, evolved. 5 years later, Marcus Chen received promotion to commander and took charge of the Xenobiological Integration Corps, a military branch dedicated to fostering partnerships between humans and species previously considered hostile. The Vorathian that had been a frightened pup during his first assessment now served beside him as a fully trained partner, intelligent, loyal, and capable of complex tactical thinking. They stood together on the observation deck of a starship, watching as new recruits worked with juvenile predators in training scenarios far more sophisticated than that first sealed room. The galaxy had changed. Humans had changed it, not through superior weapons or advanced technology, but through their peculiar ability to see family where others saw only threat. Kelvara joined them, older now, her scales marked with the honors of a distinguished career. Do you remember that first day, Commander? When you sat down before a creature that should have killed you? Marcus smiled, scratching behind his partner's ears, while the Vorathian made its contentment rumble. I remember being scared out of my mind. I also remember thinking that pup just needed someone to show it kindness. You changed the galaxy with that kindness, Kelvara said softly. You proved that the most dangerous weapon is not the one that destroys, but the one that builds bridges. Humanity's greatest strength is not your technology or tactics. It is your insane, illogical, beautiful willingness to extend trust to those who do not deserve it, and in doing so, help them become worthy of it. As if in response, the Vorathian pressed closer to Marcus, a gesture of affection from a species the galaxy once believed incapable of such emotions. Around them, the stars wheeled in eternal dance, and somewhere in the training facility below, another human sat down before another frightened creature, choosing connection over conflict, trust over fear, proving once again that the deadliest predator from Earth's death world was also its most compassionate soul.